Do good work is not a label, but a way of living. It is the constant and diligent effort to achieve a new level of excellence in one's own life. It is the hidden inner beauty behind the struggle to achieve excellence. It's not perfect, but imperfect. It is the effort, discipline, and focus that often goes unnoticed. The goal of Do Good Work is to highlight that drive. The guests I have on this show emulate this drive in their own special way. You'll be able to apply new ideas into your own life by learning from them. We will also have one-on-one episodes with me where we'll dive into my own experience with entrepreneurship and leadership. Every episode is designed to provide you with ideas that you can apply and grow in excellence in all areas of your life, business, and career.
Today on the show, we have Maurice Hofmann. Maurice is a serial entrepreneur, marketing and customer success specialist. He's well known for his innovative drive as well as for his ability to lead cross-functional teams to achieve the highest level of success. As the global vice president of customer success at Open-Xchange, Inc., Maurice is responsible to guide OX's customers towards like GoDaddy, Atlas, Orange, or TikTok, the highest level of sustainable success. His newest project is the New York City Marketing Academy and is aimed to offer small businesses, startups, and people to learn more about marketing, a no-nonsense, practical application of marketing for their business purposes. It's allowing people to know what they need to do, how to get it done, so that on Monday or after they read the book, on Monday morning, they know exactly the action items that they need to take. The New York Marketing Academy is the extension of his recently published book, The Roadmap to Marketing Success for Startups, Product Launches, or Career Changes. Maurice is on a mission to help SMBs, startup, and Zohos to empower them with the marketing strategy and knowledge for the basic principles that they need to apply their newly acquired knowledge immediately. Well, Maurice, thank you so much for being on, man.
Thanks for having me, Ron. It's a real pleasure. Thank you.
Well, Maurice, this topic today is exciting for me because I grew up in marketing, but I also know that your experience is deep-seated in marketing. There's so much that we can talk about, but first, I'd like to understand a little bit more of your backstory because you wrote the book of The Roadmap to Marketing Success, and now you're helping even more small business owners, startups get marketing right. And I think maybe we should start with the questions like where do we get marketing wrong? Like, where do we go off the principles and the foundations in regards to like what marketing is and where do we go wrong?
That's funny. And the thing where marketing is go wrong is everybody expects it to be another Steve Jobs or be somebody from Nike or whatever, right? I had that discussion actually yesterday, right? With a bunch of product managers where they said, this is Steve Jobs never asked anybody. He just knew what the solution would be, and he came up with the iPod. And I'm like, well, unfortunately, none of us is Steve Jobs, right? We have to do our homework. We have to do the base work to get us there. And once we've done the 80%, maybe we have a Steve Jobs minute, right? Where we have a brilliant idea and whatever. But what people always forget is the team and the work that comes behind it before you can be brilliant, right? And that's where I think a lot of people get marketing wrong. They just forget that it's work.
It is work. And I do want to dive into, the framework or the roadmap, because your approach, I appreciate a lot because it's a practical approach. Like with all the work that I do here with Productive Profits, it's like, okay, there's theory that's cute, but here's the real world experience that actually works. And here's the actual templates or resources that you can implement. So let's go like, we can hit up startups, we can hit up product, because product management is different from product marketing, but also we can talk about like people working in marketing and the evolution, but where should we start on that? I'm really curious.
Well, let's start at the beginning, right? Okay. And that is, I read a lot of marketing books and all of them are great, but something that I had when I started off is I read those books and I felt really bright and smart, and then Monday morning came and I didn't know what to do, right? And so all the marketing theory doesn't really tell you, all right, day one, first hour, this is the step that you have to do first. You have to start off with whatever you want to do at that point, right? Where you want to go to actually eventually get there. to your Steve Jobs moment. And that's where I said, why don't I, because I do a lot of consulting with startups, with friends that are starting their companies and smaller companies. And that's the area that I come from. So I was like, okay, what do all of them have in common? It's not that they do have an understanding of marketing or don't have an understanding of marketing, it's that they don't know what to do first, right? And that's what I try to focus on, and really pragmatic handholding.
Yeah, and that's what I really like. So with your background in marketing and your understanding, so right now we're like in a different ecosystem depending on which which industry you're heading into. You're doing B2B or B2C. Since primarily our emphasis a lot in B2B, I know there's some parallels can go to B2C, but let's focus on the B2B side. And right now, where is the best place to start? Let's say you're working with a small marketing team, or our audience right now, they might have a small team, they might have a large team, a team of range between 5 to upwards of 50 people in the marketing department. What is the current landscape that you're seeing right now for small businesses to be able to have a very productive marketing program, but also ensuring that those actions are correlating to the business's bottom line?
Yeah, I think it all starts with, and I know user centricity is such a buzzword, right? But for me, it starts there. And usually what I do is an exercise that tries to have them phrase and really articulate what it is that they want to do, what it is that they do, and who they do it for, right? And then sometimes you already see that they really don't have an idea of who their customers are, or really drives the motivation for the customers, right? There's another buzzword called the desired outcome. Why are people using your product, right? And until you cannot answer that question, you won't be able to really tell them why they should use your product versus the product from the next company over. How are you helping them to solve their issue, their problem, or reach their objectives, right? And that's usually the first conversation that I have with people is, why are you doing this? Who's your audience?
Yeah, I think that's always the baseline. It's always the start, is focusing on the audience. And even with my own consulting, you're talking to clients and reviewing, it's like, who are you actually serving? Oh, it might be this person, but what are they actually thinking about? What are their actual emotional states? What are you actually selling? And it's not typically what we think we're selling is what we're giving. It's something deeper than that. And the fact that it's a simple exercise, but I think it's also a strategic exercise, because when you can clearly articulate not your features, right? Like, I have this wonderful pen, and this pen is, a blue and 5 millimeters and whatever, right? Those are features instead of what this pen allows me to do and the status that it gives you. So I think it's pretty interesting to start on that front. And then as we move forward, let's say we have that exercise done. What are some of the next strategic moves that we can look at in our marketing, either if we're auditing our current marketing or if we're looking to launch a new campaign?
The next thing is, once you know who your audience is, you know how they talk, meaning how they communicate, which environments they move, and then you just take it from there. The next exercise that I usually do is the communication matrix, where I really walk through a number of steps, from high-level description of what they think that they're doing, to formulating a mission, a vision, all the way to the positioning, all the way to an elevator pitch. And that is usually something that can take up to a week in multiple sessions. Yeah. Because people go left, right, and anywhere, and they are not able to simplify in message what it is that they do. People like to be complicated, right?
Yeah, and I love how you talk. So just because our audience knows this, that I love philosophy. I talk in philosophic terms. But the first stage always in philosophy is, what is it? That's metaphysics, right? The second is, how do you communicate what this is? That's epistemology. And here we are communicating what it is that we do, to who we do it for, in a way that is in their environment. I like that you use the term environment, the way that they perceive it and how they like to talk. And then from here comes in the positioning piece of like, why you versus someone else, and your pricing, which is a whole nother schema of things when it comes to positioning. Cool. So we're talking about knowing our customers, knowing where they're at, what they want, what they desire, how we're talking to them, where they're hanging out, where we can hang out with them, where we're positioned in the marketplace. And that I think does take, I mean, it does sound like the right time frame. It does take a while to actually do that correctly if you do this exercise. So as we're doing this now, we have this solidified. Where do we go from here?
Next thing is just understanding how do you approach them. So you know how to talk to them, but where's the channels that you can reach them at? Are they more the LinkedIn type people, the Facebook type people? Do you need to have your website in order? Are they reading blogs? Where do they really maneuver about, right? And there's a lot of iterations that go through this, right? Where you have to test different channels and a lot of research and talking to your audience, right? Again, it's the talking to the audience doesn't stop once you know who they are. You have to refine it and have that conversation with them over and over again and just confirm that your assumption that you have are actually on point, right? And then what I like to do, especially even with the big companies that I'm consulting for my day job, I like to refine all the collateral that we have and bring that in front of audience and see how they react to it, right? Because normally you're not your target audience for one reason or another. It's rare that you are exactly the people that you're selling to, right? So you have to make sure that they get the message and receive the message exactly how you sent it, right? And what you're intending to send. And that's where a lot of disconnection happens. Because we all been in the university and the communication, right? There's the sending and then there's the receiving. The sender has to make sure that on the receiving end, the message is received as the sender intends it to. Because otherwise, there's a lot of communication going, but it leads to nothing. So that's what I would like. Go ahead.
No, that's a great, because how do we measure that? Is it more direct response? I'm asking for an action, and if they take that action, or how do you, well, what are some ways that we can measure that what we send through is received correctly?
Well, what I like to do is a lot of A/B testing. So I create the same kind of environment, and in one version I communicate this way and have maybe a different color scheme, because communication is more than just the words or the written word, right? It's also the visual communication that you have. And I test two versions. What you want to make sure is that you don't test 5 things at the same time, right? You want to taste one thing, find out which works better, and then move on to the next item. So you start with the language, maybe to the visuals, to the picture language that you want to relate to, and so on, right?
Yeah. Well, let's shift gears a little bit here, because I love where we're heading here, but I want to know what got us here. So like, I would love to know more about your journey, your background, because I mean, you've worked with small businesses, but also some pretty big known names. So I'd love to know a little bit more about your story and what ended up now becoming the New York City Marketing Academy.
Yeah, I started off, funny enough, I did a lot of stuff in my youth when I was like a teenager, but eventually I went to the Army and got to a unit called Psychological Operations, PsyOps. And what they hammered into us is empathy, knowing the audience, talking to the audience, and so on and so forth. So that became my red line, right? That became and you heard it already, right? I mentioned talking to your customers like 47 times already, right? And we only talked it for 10 minutes. But they hammer that in there. If you don't understand the background, and the background is more than what they tell you, you have to do a very comprehensive research. So that's how I started off. From there, I founded an agency, and we made it a brand experience agency, right? So we worked with brands like Reebok, for example. And instead of putting the gear and the promotions just in front of the customers and told them, hey, buy this, we went the route of, hey, why don't you want to test this? And that time, Reebok tried their RBK line, which was their premier basketball line. They had Allen Iverson and so on, right? So they tried to really gain some ground there. And what we allowed them is we brought some very good basketball players. We put a basketball court in front of the stores, and kids could go in the store, get testing gear, come to the court and play against a college level, semi-professional basketball player. And really see and experience, this is what this brand is about. Experience the brand. And then, hey, if you like it, it's fine. If you don't like it, there's nothing we could do. If you don't like that experience, yourself in the gear with the cool guys around you and really doing what this gear is about, there's nothing we can do. So no convincing, no talking to death, but just offering you all the criteria that you need for yourself to come to a decision. And that
To
was
empower the
brilliant.
decision. Yeah, that's incredible. To empower the decision, doing everything you can, where it's more like let the work do its talking or the product do the talking. Well, that's really cool.
Image transfer. Yeah. And that's what we did. That's what I did for several years, dating myself here. And then eventually I shifted to the other side, to the industry side.
How did that go? How was the shift going when you were working with experience brand design, now moving to the industry side? How was that transition, and what are some of the things that you took away there that you're now being able to implement in your book and in the Marketing Academy?
What was great about this is now I was the guy designing the strategies, right? And making the decisions whether or not we go with that campaign or this campaign. And that was kind of refreshing, because as an agency, you always talk to your customers and you give them the best possible advice. But at the end of the day, they're going to make a decision whether or not they want to do this, right?
Yeah.
Do they want to do brand experience marketing or just hand out another flyer, right? That's not up to you. And on the industry side, I had the freedom to do that. I bring that experience and that mindset that I had as an agency to the industry side and work there. So that's fun.
That's pretty cool. And I think when it comes to strategy, I mean, this is something that I've seen sometimes day in, day out when I'm working with clients one-on-one, is how do you discern or make the best decision between two goods, right? Let's say, like you just mentioned, there's two campaigns or two opportunities that we can take. Can you walk us through a little bit more of your strategic mindset of how you analyze or just look at different opportunities or different strategies and deciding which one is the best one based on the desired outcome?
Yeah. And there I would like to pull back and say, you don't start off with a marketing strategy. You start off with a corporate strategy, right? You start off with a strategy for your business.
Yeah.
So, and that informs what the goals are that your marketing strategy is supposed to reach, right? And within this marketing strategy, I think in the book I have a sentence like, there's no such thing as a social media strategy, right? Because that's not how you start. You start off with marketing, and then social media is one of the tools that you utilize to realize the marketing strategy, right? So the word strategies is used a bit too loosely for my mindset, right? And that might be the German in me, but it's not everything is strategy. Some of it is strategy, and that's the high level, and the other stuff is tactics, right? Where you just go out there and execute. And so that's where I like to start, is what does the company want to achieve? Right? Do they want to achieve a revenue of 100,000 or 100 million? Right? That's a very different mindset that you need to have in terms of, okay, if I want to achieve 100,000, there's a couple of things I need to do. If I want to achieve 100 million, I need to operate in an entirely different scale, right? And so that informs, first of all, what is the scale, what's the mindset, and then once that is out of the way, everything else is the same steps, in my opinion. It's just that you, instead of running in a social media campaign where you, for Facebook, for example, where you spend $1 a day, you spend $1,000 a day, right? But the tools and the steps that you get you there and inform your decisions should always be the same, because that is the basic. That's the marketing 101. If you mess it up, I have a large corporation that I work with right now, and they invested $400,000 for a content marketing campaign, and that's what they do. They and 400,000 is nothing for them, and they sold 35 products, 35 units, and that is, they could have gone out there and hand almost $10,000 to people and say, oh, by the way, buy one of my products. And I would have still had a better revenue, an ROI, because they would have sold 40, right?
It's incredible.
And that's what it is, right? Just dumping money on it doesn't make your campaign better. You still have to do the groundwork. And the groundwork is the same. That doesn't cost anything, really. It's about whether or not you do it.
You are hitting some absolute gold. I love the fact, and I want to dissect this a bit, because even going back to your story of the Reebok, like the shoe, right? You're testing the shoe, and that shoe, could either be worn by professionals, or for me, who is not very good at basketball and not 6'10", right? But
Not by my, right?
yeah, right. But the whole idea is the foundations, the tools are always the same depending on the outcomes. And I think that's such a beautiful way of looking at it, because sometimes I think that the mindset is when you're looking at your small business or you're running your operation, and yeah, you might be spending maybe a couple $100 a day on marketing, maybe a couple thousand if you can, but those same tools and strategies work at a different scale. Obviously, your operations need to sustain that level of scale, which is true in all fronts. But the groundworks are the same. The strategy thinking is the same. And when you do that right, I mean, that was a perfect example. $400,000 spent to make 35 sales in units. That's abysmal, right? Like it's incredible.
That's terrible.
Like, yeah.
For a product that costs $5, by the way, right?
Yeah, that's yeah, that's we won't go how bad that is. But the whole idea is that the work, the craftsmanship that you can put in to the current operation, the current strategy for your business right now. If you do it with the right process, the right intent, you might be running a multi-million-dollar campaign, even though you're not going to be able to fund it at $100 million just up front.
Exactly.
You're running at the same caliber as other companies. Exactly. And that makes it so accessible where it's like, oh, I don't have to be this Fortune 500 brand to do this. And I think that's really empowering. Going back to the groundworks, we laid that out in the beginning, right? We laid out that work in the beginning of our conversation.
Yeah.
But then you drew a line, which I truly appreciate, the difference between a strategy and a tactic, and then also principle thinking. The principles we discussed earlier, knowing your market, knowing how you talk to them, knowing where they hang out, knowing what your message, your positioning, your pricing. When you combine those together, how do you look at strategy, and where do you draw the line between strategies and tactics? Is it like my strategy is to grow revenue by, let's say 50% by end of quarter, or more sales by end of quarter? That's a strategy. This is how we're going to do it. And then the tactics are branches of actions. Is that how you look at the tactics?
Essentially, yeah. I mean, a good strategy formulates a certain amount of actions, but eventually, for example, in a strategy, it would formulate, you utilize social media to reach your goal and communicate your product, right? But then in a tactics, you exactly define Monday morning, this happens, Tuesday, that happens. I use channel A, B, C, and D, and so on, right? And that's where you really get tactical. And again, that's my army background, where you really get tactical in planning out what it is that you do. So for me, and I might be wrong, right? But for me, a strategy doesn't have a plan where there are states on there. There's always a time frame. For me, a tactic has a plan where you can see on Monday, the 22nd, I'm doing this, right? I'm posting these kind of messages through those kind of channels, right? So that is where strategy and tactics are differentiated. But however you call it, it's just that you have the right mindset of, okay, there's a high level formulating my goals, my objectives, and what kind of resources I have. And then in the tactics, it's really about the execution of things.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think you are definitely right there. I remember when I learned, I think I was reading a book on thinking, like just mind processes. And like the first thing is to understand the principles behind the actual thing that you're trying to do. What are the principles, the laws at play? Then with those laws, look at your constraints, resources, time, money. Not that time is a resource, it just exists, and et cetera. You don't have a time bank. But then from there, combining that and creating a strategy for an end outcome. And then, like you said, the tactics are, okay, step 1, do this, step 2, do this, step 3, with a time frame in day. So I think there is the logical chain of events is, it just makes rational sense. And you have this map, like this type of layout and map in your book, the roadmap to marketing success.
Yes, that's what I try to do. The entire book is already created where at the end of each chapter, there's a workbook section in there where you can actually note down your key takeaways, where depending on what the topic of the chapter before was, I give you exercises, or I point you to the website where you get your exercises, and what are your key takeaways, what is your notes that you have, and what are your next steps, right? So that's where it starts. And then you also get a lot of plans. You get your social media plan, you get strategic plan. You get the exercises for the communication, because again, it's about executing all the strategies and the high level theories that you get from the other books. It's about executing them, right? And that's what I try to help with the book.
No, I love that. That's really exciting. So we'll put that book link in the show notes. But Maurice, what are some of the things that you're excited for, this coming decade? I mean, we're in a new era, new decade, right? So like, what are some of the exciting things that you're working at, you're seeing in the marketing landscape as well as with your business?
What's funny? I just talked about this a couple of days ago. I'm right now. I'm in Europe, as I said before. And in Europe, the laws for what you can do with data are really strict, and they're just getting stricter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the funny thing is with GDPR, which is one of the laws that define what you can do with people and whether or not you can collect their cookies and personal identification data, is the thing that we said there is. The funny thing is, now you have to go back and really do work with your customer. If your customer doesn't like you here in Europe, they're not sharing any data. So all the analytics and so on won't work because they don't have to share the data with you. So that brings you back to, you have to do the basics. You have to be a good citizen in that environment, because otherwise you're not getting the data that eventually will make you successful. And that is something I'm really excited about, because all this, I'm throwing money on there, I'm just doing the analytics, and I don't care about my users because I know better what they want to know than they do themselves. And all that is at least for Europe right now, is going out of the window, because they have total ownership of what it is that they want to do and don't want to do, even more than Web 2.0 initially brought them and social media brought them, right? This is the next step, and now you really have to work for it again and really take care of each and every user, because they can ruin you in a minute. And we've seen this in the news, right? So, and that's what I'm excited about, actually. It's really challenging, but first of all, I like a challenge, but it's also going back to, I like this, right? We have to do real marketing again and know what we're doing and be good at it.
I think the key word is relationship, right? In that relationship with your customers, knowing what they're like, where they're at, how can you help them? And going back to the business is just becoming more human with all this technology advancement, with all the new iOS updates that's blocking your ad tracking, with all these different things. Just get to know them, get back to the human level. No, I love that. Well, Maurice, where's the best place for people to go to thank you for this episode, learn more about you, and reach you?
Well, I have all my channels that I have on social media are at Maurice. It's spelled a bit funny. It's Moreeze.
Yeah.
But that's where you can get me. And from there, I'm more than happy to channel you anywhere that you need to go to.
Okay, perfect. Now put that link in the show notes, Maurice. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.